I'm Justin Silverman of the New England First Amendment Coalition. Thank you for joining us for another round of open government lessons. During this class, you'll learn how to work outside the public records law in Rhode Island to get the documents you need. Maybe you made a public records request and were denied. You appealed the denial and again were told that the records you need are off limits. Meanwhile, your deadline is looming and a story needs to be told. What can you do when the state's public records law doesn't work in your favor and you find yourself out of options? We'll soon hear how reporter Steph Machado answered that question. If you haven't already, please view our previous classes on public records, open meetings, and state court systems. The lessons they provide are all cumulative, starting you off with the basics and then gradually addressing more nuanced areas of the law and journalism practice. The classes are state specific and provide practical, step-by-step lessons you won't find anywhere else. You can find them all in our FOI guide at nefac.org/FOI guide and on our YouTube channel, Five Freedoms. Before we begin, I want to recognize the estate of Gloria L. Negri for its support of these classes. Gloria was a trailblazing journalist at the Boston Globe for more than 50 years. This program is part of her legacy of newsroom education and her lifelong commitment to local journalism. You can learn more about Gloria and other NEFAC supporters at nefac.org/supporters. During today's presentation, I encourage you to introduce yourself in the chat and share your own experiences and resources. Steph, all yours.
Thanks, Justin. Hello, my name is Steph Machado. I'm a reporter for the Boston Globe Rhode Island team. So I cover the state of Rhode Island along with 6 other talented reporters. Even though we work for the Boston Globe, we do operate here out of Providence. I live in Providence. Our office is in Providence, and I've been covering Rhode Island for 10 years. I used to work at Channel 12. So I have had a lot of APRA drama. Obviously, APRA is the Access to Public Records Act. It is how we get public records here in Rhode Island. But listen, it fails us a lot. I have a love-hate relationship with APRA. I think it has a lot of flaws, and frequently, frankly, does not achieve what I want it to achieve in time for my deadline. And so, the most obvious reason why APRA can fail us is, frankly, it just takes too long. While you're supposed to get records within 10 business days, government agencies routinely claim the 20-day extension on top of the original 10 days. They can do that for a variety of reasons because, they just have too many APRAs pending, the lawyers are on vacation, or frankly, if it's something they don't really want to release, they will use the 20-day extension because they're allowed to. So that puts you at a total of 30 business days. That could be up to 45 calendar days or even more if there's holidays and weekends and all of that. The other thing is that they charge us for records sometimes, and the clock, when they decide to charge you, the clock stops until you pay. Then you're negotiating, you're narrowing the request, you're getting a new quote for payment, you're asking your boss to cut a check. That all takes time and it stops the clock. You can appeal an APRA denial, sure, but that can take months, even up to a year. And frankly, I haven't had the best of luck appealing APRAs because the Attorney General's office has said that they don't have a lot of power when you appeal because something's in the public's interest. That actually needs to go to Superior Court, and very few of us are going to file a lawsuit over a couple of redactions. And then finally, there's just a lot of exemptions. So agencies, if they want to hide something from you, they will find an exemption to use so that they can redact the document or just simply withhold it. So those are all the reasons why APRA can fail us and why we really shouldn't let APRA miss our deadline, right? Don't wait around for APRA to do your story because oftentimes something is in the news and we want to follow up on it and we want to write about it immediately. And waiting around for 45 days only to be disappointed by denial or a document full of redactions can really be a bummer. So these are some of the other things I do to try to get public records in Rhode Island other than APRA. First, sort of obvious, but who else has the document or the record or the video? Will they share it? Can you ask them for it? Maybe they will share it with you anonymously. Maybe they will show it to you, but they don't want to give it to you because they could get in trouble. Sure, I would love to read the document. in person and then do my reporting from there. I could try another government agency. Just because one agency is slow walking your APRA or trying to charge you a lot of money, another agency might treat it differently. My favorite is court records. I love court records. I like them more than APRA. They are the best. They are very rarely redacted. They are occasionally sealed. If there's a situation, but you have to ask a judge to seal them, so it's a pretty high bar compared to um, with APRA, sort of a lawyer can just sort of make that decision to redact something. Um, what I love court records for in particular is police records. So, you can go, and I frequently do go to the Providence Police Department and get police reports from the records office. I don't really, it's not, I don't really file a formal APRA request. I just ask for it verbally, but they are operating under the APRA when they give me the document, but they heavily redact those police reports. They're doing it because they can, under APRA you can redact things for privacy reasons, but you don't have to. When I go to court and get the police report from the court file, it is typically unredacted. And so it might have information in there that wasn't in the police report that I got through APRA. It also typically has maybe people's names and phone numbers. I wouldn't publish people's phone numbers, of course, but I might want to call them for comment. And perhaps that was redacted in the original report. So I love court forever, the best. Another thing I do is I ask lawyers, if this is a record that involves perhaps a victim, perhaps an employee who's been wronged, a whistleblower. They might have a lawyer who has the documents. So I don't even need to get it from the state, from APRA. I can ask the other party, whoever else is involved, if they have the documents. Elected officials may have the documents. And they, frankly, have their own, might have political motives for releasing them. And I don't really care what their motives are. I just want to see the records. And so sometimes I'll call around to elected officials. This is one of my favorites, use the Open Meetings Act. In Rhode Island, if you're at a public meeting and there is a document that is entered into as an exhibit in that public meeting, you can ask for it on the spot during that meeting and they have to hand it to you. So you don't have to wait 10 days or put it in APRA. Even if you missed the meeting, in my experience, I have had no trouble getting exhibits to meetings by just reaching out to the clerk or the chair of the committee or the elected officials who are on the board, and they'll give it to me because they know it's a public record because it was handed out in the meeting. When all else fails, write about the denial. I mean, obviously this only works with something that's particularly newsworthy, but when the government is refusing to give out records and the story is of high public interest. The public is usually interested in the fact that they're refusing, and then there's typically some public pressure for them to hurry up. That's obviously when all else fails. Okay, so I'm going to give a couple of examples of times in which I have gotten records outside of the APRA. If you have heard of this story, Providence Police Sergeant Joseph Hanley was arrested in May of 2020 for assaulting a handcuffed man on the streets of Providence in April 2020. This was obviously right in the middle of the pandemic. So it did not get a lot of attention. There was no like bystander video going around on social media. It turns out there was a bystander video, but they didn't post it on social media. We only found that out during the trial. And so it didn't get a lot of buzz or attention. And all we really knew when police arrested Sergeant Hanley was they sent out a press release and they said that he had struck a man. But what does struck mean? What exactly did he do? It was very non-specific. I filed an APRA request for the body camera video of the incident. You can see a screen grab of it here of Sergeant Hanley's knee going into the neck of this man. But initially, I was denied this body camera footage, despite the fact that body camera video is public under APRA. The reason I was given is that the police department thought that it would harm the eventual trial. Sometimes they do withhold body camera video if the case is still under investigation. In this case, they had already arrested Sergeant Hanley, so they had conducted a month-long investigation. Sure, I'm sure they were still gathering evidence pre-trial. They always do that, but in this case, they were concerned that releasing it would essentially like taint the jury pool. The trial hadn't happened yet. They didn't want the video to be out there. And, obviously my suspicion is that the video looked really bad for the police department. So for quite a while, the video was not out there. There was some mounting pressure to get it. Um, I didn't initially, so these were, okay, so these were some of the options to proceed after being denied the video. I could appeal to the Attorney General's office, but here's the problem with the Attorney General's office being the venue for appealing APRA requests, is that the Attorney General's office is prosecuting these cases from the police department. So they also don't want their case to be tainted. So I don't think the Attorney General's office is really the best venue for appeals. Other states do it, some other states do it differently. Um, because they all, they are law enforcement as well. And so when you're appealing a law enforcement denial, you're unlikely to be successful in my experience. The Attorney General did say publicly that he was seeking an ethics opinion from the Rhode Island Supreme Court on whether or not he could release this video before the trial. So I did not actually bother filing the appeal because I knew that we were going to get an answer either way. The AG was going to make some sort of decision and he was going to say it publicly. But the AG was not the only one who had the video. This gentleman, who you can see in this still from this video, his name is Jose Batista. He is a state representative, and at the time, he was the executive director of the Providence External Review Authority. It's basically a civilian oversight board that investigates the Providence police. Excuse me. The para board had subpoenaed the police department for this video because they wanted to see it in their work as an oversight agency, and they got it. And I was hoping that that would mean that it would be made public. The board actually voted not to release it. Um, but I asked Rep. Batista, who was, then executive director Batista, for it anyway. The Providence Journal did as well, and he actually released it. So even though he worked for the city and the city had already denied an APRA, he felt differently. He is a lawyer and he thought that it was perfect. He thought it was a public record and that it was perfectly legal to release it, and he released it. So let's watch some of it, and I'm just going to preface you. The video you're about to watch is the story that I did that night. I received this video on, I think, a CD from Mr. Batista like an hour before the newscast, and I don't even know where you put a CD in a computer these days, but it's not like the best video editing work because it was slammed together. But this is the story that we had that night.
New at 6, we're seeing video of the moment a Providence police sergeant allegedly kicked and kneeled on a suspect who was already laying on the ground in handcuffs.
That suspect is now the alleged victim in this case. The charges dropped against him, and the police sergeant faces a single count of assault. Target 12 investigator Steph Machado joins us now with what the video shows and the unusual way it was released.
Police and the city of Providence have repeatedly declined our requests for this video, saying it would harm the ongoing court case. But a civilian board got a hold of it over the summer, and its executive director said it was time for the public to see it. The video from another officer's body camera on April 19th shows police pulling Rashad Gore out of a car while a woman screams. Gore, on the ground and in handcuffs, is kicked, police say, by Sergeant Joseph Hanley. Hanley also appearing to place his knee on Gore's neck, bouncing it repeatedly. 1 month later, after a review of this video, Hanley was charged with 1 count of misdemeanor simple assault. Police writing in a press release that he struck Gore while handcuffed, but did not go into detail. And the police department declined to release the video of the incident, citing the ongoing court case. They also wouldn't show it to the Providence External Review Authority, a civilian oversight board tasked with investigating police.
And it's been increasingly frustrating and increasingly disappointing ever since I began to advocate for the release of this video.
Okay, so we don't have to watch the whole story there, but you got the gist of it there. You can see the sergeant kicking Rashad Gore in the side. He starts calling him names. At one point, he calls him like a savage and an animal. He says, "Oh, you like that?" He was really heckling him while Mr. Gore was on the ground, prone on the sidewalk in handcuffs. There was a number of different strikes and punches and kicks, and he kneeled on his neck at one point, which he continues to deny doing. But without getting into the 5 years of drama that occurred,
2 at 6, we're seeing video.
that occurred since then, here was sort of the result. So the release of the Hanley video prompted public outcry that Hanley had not yet been fired from his job at the PD. The city said they couldn't do so because of the Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights, which was a state law. There was a lot of outrage over both this case and then other high-profile police brutality cases. That eventually helped lead to changes in the law. It's now called the Law Enforcement Officers Due Process, Accountability, and Transparency Act. I will note it didn't change that much. I think that Sergeant Hanley still wouldn't have been able to be fired under the new law. But Hanley had actually the last Leobor hearing under the old Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights, which is the hearing where they decide whether or not you're going to be fired. Before a panel of 3 police officers. He actually was reinstated to the force, and the city's appealing that decision. Under the new law, there's now civilians in that hearing. So who knows if that would have changed the outcome of this case, but this was certainly a really high-profile case because of that video. If the video had not come out, and it would have come out eventually in the trial, but people really didn't understand what it was he had done and the specifics until they saw the video. And that Jose Batista, that state rep, who was the executive director of Para, was actually fired by the Para board for releasing the video, which I think he knew was a possible outcome when he did it. And he sued the city for wrongful termination and eventually settled the case. So that's just a good example of getting a document, seeing if anyone else has it and if they're willing to release it. Okay, so another, as I mentioned, I really love open meetings. It's really easy to get documents from open meetings in my experience. I think this story is the first time I sort of discovered this. This story is really old. There was maybe 8-10 years ago at this point, a school bus driver strike in Providence. So the bus company that drives, 20,000 Providence kids to school went on strike. And obviously this was a huge deal. It was very disruptive to school. This was pre-pandemic, but I mean, imagine if this happened today. I mean, the kids are like just now getting back to school, basically. And I was covering the strike for the 5 o'clock news, and I think the strike went on for a while, so this was probably like 3, 4, or 5 days into the strike. We were doing stories every day, looking for new angles every single day. And we wanted to understand, what is the deal with the contract? The Providence Schools pays this company First Student to bring the kids to school, and right now they are not bringing the kids to school because the drivers are on strike. And I wanted to get my hands on the contract, and I was working with my colleague Dan McGowan, who's my colleague now at the Globe, but at the time was my colleague at Channel 12. And I can APRA the contract. Nobody denied me this contract, but I needed to get this story on the news that evening. I couldn't wait 30, 40 days for someone to get around to fulfilling my APRA for this contract. And someone told me, hey, they introduced this contract at a city council meeting a few weeks ago I think it was a committee meeting, if I'm remembering correctly. And Dan McGowan at the time was our City Hall reporter at Channel 12. And he said, oh, they introduced it at the meeting, and he made one phone call, and this contract was in our inbox like 5 minutes later. And I screenshotted the part that was relevant to the story, which basically said that in the case of a strike, the school district was excusing First Student from performing under their contract. They're basically letting them out of their contract because of the strike, which means the bus company didn't even have to pay the city back. The city was going to keep paying this bus company that was literally not driving the kids to school. The taxpayers were going to keep paying this bus company, despite the fact that the kids weren't being brought to school. So this was very newsworthy. This literally made it on the news like minutes after we got the contract. Again, we just don't always have 10 days, 20 days, 30 days to wait around for APRA to get us a document. This was a really great use of that Open Meetings Act, where any document that's introduced, you can typically get your hands on really, really quickly. Another strategy that I use is to try the feds. I know that sounds crazy because federal FOIA has this terrible reputation. It takes years. You don't even work at the company. You don't even work at that news outlet anymore by the time you get your documents. But, sometimes they can surprise you. They don't always have the same there might be something that the state really doesn't want you to see, and the feds don't really care if you see it or not. If, obviously this is if the feds have the document, so this would have to be something that the feds are involved in. But a couple of years ago, I got wind, or I guess this was last year, I got wind that there was a lot of problems happening at this school called the Newcomer Academy in Providence. It was a school for new immigrants to this country. They opened it with some COVID relief money. Essentially students who really didn't speak much English. They were far behind in school and needed to catch up. so that they could graduate high school, if not with their peers, perhaps at some point before they turn 21. I had interviewed a number of teachers about problems happening at the school, corners being cut, trying to shove 3 years of math into one semester with students who don't speak English and teachers who don't speak Spanish. I mean, it was really problematic. And the US Department of Justice for a number of years had been monitoring Providence because they were not properly teaching their multilingual learners, which is students who are not proficient in English. And I've had pretty decent luck getting FOIA-ing the Department of Justice for updates on Providence. They send them letters periodically when about their progress, and sometimes they say you're doing a terrible job, and sometimes they say you're making improvement, good job. And I've had decent luck getting those from the DOJ. Again, it's not that Providence denied me these documents. It's that I was on deadline. I already had a lot of information about this newcomer academy. I was actually at the point in my reporting where I was getting ready to ask Providence school officials for an interview, which, as you know, means, I'm probably going to finish the story in a couple of days. I've gathered all my information and now I'm asking for a response. When I caught wind that the Department of Justice was also investigating the newcomer academy. So I FOIA'd the DOJ. I said, hey, give me your latest letter to the Providence schools, because I know that they send them these regular letters. And they sent me back a letter saying that the students at the Newcomer Academy have not been properly receiving English language development and that they are violating federal civil rights law. So this was like a smoking gun for a story that I was already working on, already planning on reporting about this school. And I got it like fairly quickly. Again, if I had APRA'd the Providence School Department for this letter, they would have given it to me, but I know that they would have taken the full time allowed by law to get that to me, simply because they can. And that's not to, say that the Providence School Department doesn't follow APRA. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that when they don't want you to see something, it is not going to be on their top priority list to expedite it for you. So this is another example of, the federal agency was faster. Another example, this was a front page story that Alexa Gagas and I did about the stalled development of the Superman building. We really, really wanted to know what the new cost of redeveloping this building was. They're trying to develop it into hundreds of apartments, but it's been stalled for so long that there's no way it was still a $220 million project, which is what they had originally announced. The project is getting state taxpayer money and city taxpayer money. And so we feel that the developer owes it to the public to provide updates, but it is a private developer and they were not playing ball with this story. They would not do an interview with us. They would not answer our questions. They literally wouldn't even tell us the current cost of the project. And so there was a state document that had the dollar figure on it that we were denied. And forgive me for not remembering the exact exemption, but I believe it was something, it might have been the draft exemption because it was sort of a draft new business plan. I hope I'm not incorrect on that, but either way, it was denied. We did not get the document from the state, but we actually ended up finding, like buried on a federal website, a PDF that was full of project applications for this federal loan that the project is trying to get. And right there on that PDF was this new price tag. I didn't finish filling out this slide. It says a whopping blank. It was a really high number, somewhere north of $300 million. We took that number to the developer spokesperson, and he had previously refused to tell us the new price tag. And he said, oh, no, it's 308 million, because we showed him that we had this evidence from the feds that the dollar amount had gone up to 300 and something million. So anyway, again, you just don't really think that the federal government is going to be that helpful, and they're usually not, but they just sometimes have records publicly available that the state is not going to give you. Just one more, and I know we're running out of time here, and I want to get to questions. But sometimes different state agencies will give you different results, even though they are both from the same, in this case, the McKee administration. So after the closure of the Washington Bridge in December of 2023, I asked Governor Dan McKee's office for, I will admit, a lot of records. I asked for all of their emails, about the Washington Bridge from July to December because July was the last time the bridge had been inspected and they said that it was fine, and then it failed in December. So I wanted to know, had anyone chattered about this in between July and December? And did they have any information or any knowledge that the bridge was in bad condition? So they sent me back this estimate. You can see highlighted here, they're estimating a prepayment cost of $2,433.75. This is practically a denial, right? I mean, I know it's not really a denial, but we're not going to pay this, especially when I was on a fishing expedition. I didn't even know if there was a smoking gun in these emails. I mean, I had no idea what I was going to be getting. And to go to my boss and ask for $2,000 was, when I didn't know what it was kind of a non-starter. Perhaps we would pay that for something if we knew for sure what we were getting. So I narrowed this request significantly. I narrowed it to actually just 5 days, just the 5 days leading up to the bridge closure, I believe. And then I also narrowed it to just a handful of people. And then they came back to me with a new estimate of $459, which I thought was really excessive considering that I only wanted like 5 days of emails and I believe text messages. And theoretically, if they didn't know there was something wrong with the bridge until December 11th was the day that it closed, but they knew about it a couple days before that. But if they didn't know about this problem in advance, there shouldn't have been that many emails about it. So I had made an identical request to the Department of Transportation, and I had narrowed it in an identical way, or almost identical way, obviously a different list of people. And the Department of Transportation didn't charge me anything for the narrowed request. They would have charged me for the wider one. So I asked for these 5 days worth of emails. I received them without having to pay anything. Um, was it identical to what I would have gotten from the governor's office? No, but a lot of the governor's office people were CC'd on the emails. So odds are I got a lot of the same emails for free that the governor's office was going to charge me for. I never paid the 400 something to the governor's office. I actually did appeal that fee and I tried to use the public interest argument to say that they should waive the fee in the interest of public interest. The Attorney General's office, I lost. I knew I was going to lose. The Attorney General's office basically agreed. They encouraged the governor's office to either reduce the fee or waive the fee, but they said, we cannot order them to waive the fee. They are allowed to charge a fee under the law. The only people that can waive the fee is the Superior Court, which I knew, but I tried anyway. So this resulted in this story. Internal emails shed light on Rhode Island's response to critical failure of Washington Bridge. Basically, this engineer in these emails, explained for the first time, we saw this for the first time publicly, that the bridge failure may have happened way earlier than when they discovered it in December. And so this really shed light on that, and it sort of kicked off this long multi-year process of trying to figure out what the heck happened with this bridge, which, to be honest, we still don't have all the answers. Okay, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask. And if you want to email me and you have anything else to ask, my email address is right here.
Thank you. And one more question, because we might have a number of new journalists that are watching your presentation, or those that are maybe beginning a new beat, and they're hearing your advice about sourcing and going to sources when you can't get the documents through the law, and thinking, well, I don't have that network right now. I don't have those sources. Any quick advice you could provide to those reporters on building up that network and developing those sources?
Yeah, I mean, people ask me all the time, like, how do you get sources? It's just talking to people. It's not cloak and dagger, in the parking garage, deep throat, things that you picture. I mean, particularly when I start on a new beat, I've been covering the city hall for a long time now. I went to City Hall like every day when I started on that beat. I was at every little committee meeting. I was at the Board of Contract and Supply. I was at the Board of Licenses. I was at the Finance Committee. I was at the Ordinance Committee. I wasn't writing stories about all those meetings. Nobody wants to read a bunch of stories about meetings. But I was just meeting people. I was learning, frankly. I was learning how city government operates. That was the main reason I was there. But during that process, I talked to people. I talked to the clerks. They're nice. I learn, I ask about their families. Like I'm a person. I'm a real person, and I like to talk to people. I get to know the officials, the staff. And over time, they see your coverage and they if they believe it to be accurate, then they learn to trust you and vice versa. And if there's something that they think you should know about, they start calling you and telling you, hey, you should cover this. And then when I am looking for a document or looking for information, I call them and I say, hey, did you hear about this? Can you tell me anything about it? And you just sort of build that rapport with people. So it's not something that happens overnight. You can't move to a new city or start a new beat and suddenly be getting sources left and right, and getting all this juicy tips and details. Like, it just takes effort. Start writing stories about that subject and people will start reaching out to you themselves as well.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate all this advice and all the work you do at the Boston Globe. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
And many thanks to everyone for joining us. We provide these lessons as a public service to you, so please return the favor and encourage your colleagues and friends to join us. We have a lot to learn from each other, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon. On behalf of NEFAC, thank you. Thank you for all you do, and take care. Bye now.
Bye.